of the book trailer, and then I welcome very much our dear Vice President Antonella Sberna, who honored us with her presence. She will take the floor. We will have then an address by MP Brando Benifei, and then we start the discussion with the presentation of the book made by the author. I will try to, let's say, interview a little bit her, but there will be also room for intervention from the audience, and I'm sure that we will enjoy very much this book, because since the title is already inspiring and say showing something that personally I didn't believe before, how to, let's say, consider poetry and artificial intelligence. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, and let's start and let's go into the topic of this evening. Maybe if we can even switch off some lights, if someone can.
Siamo strumenti per continuare l'esistenza e rendiamo servizio alla gioia. Ci adattiamo agli istinti, li seguiamo, fiduciosi e positivi. Siamo liberi nell'infinita opera di creazione della vita e ci rimettiamo ad essa. È bello adattarsi ad un'opera perfetta e farne parte.
Per quanto ci provi, sarà sempre pieno. Non dimenticare mai il successo zeppo e intatto.
esercizio di vita, ginnastica dell'anima che si riunisce al corpo per fare festa con lui della bellezza dell'infinito possibile. Quando l'anima parla, si può ascoltarla e scriverla in 1000 modi, dipingerla con 1000 colori, cantarla e suonarla in musica. Scrivere poesie è rappresentare il miracolo della nostra esistenza, perenne, forte e vera, nella realtà dei sensi, strumenti di gioco e percezione.
Shining in the dark. Open the light. Close the dark. Discover the beauty of light vibrations. Leaves in the wind, waves in the sea. It's life that brings you deep in a flow. You touch the energy that makes things alive and you feel part of it. The dark is now far away.
La poesia nell'era dell'intelligenza artificiale, disponibile da oggi in formato cartaceo e digitale, online e nelle migliori librerie. La poésie à l'ère de l'intelligence artificielle, disponible dès aujourd'hui en format papier et numérique, en ligne et dans les meilleures librairies. Poetry in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, available from today in paper and digital format, online and in the best bookstores.
Wow.
So I give the floor to our Vice President, Madam Sberna.
Thank you, Mr. This is not artificial intelligence, it's reality. Thank you, Mr. Mannelli, and thank you, Mrs. Polidori, for your poetry, for your book, but also to allow us to reflect on something that it could be, it seems very particular, and in my opinion, it's something fantastic. Because a member of our administration, because you are so in the grey Brussels bubble, inside these walls, you allow us to dream for a while with the images and to dream about something that it could be so far in our minds, and I think it would be so necessary and so useful, because I'm not only the Vice President of the European Parliament, but with Mr. Mannelli we share the working group of artificial intelligence, cybersecurity and information technology. And so we have the possibility to talk about very often about how artificial intelligence is impacting on our daily life, on the life of the legislators, on the life of the public administration of the European Parliament on the life of our people, young and not so young, and how and what are the rules, because in the European Commission, but also among all the institutions, we are debating on how artificial intelligence is so important for our daily life, because it's something that we use daily, how we have the necessity to regulate, and how it could be lived by himself to help our daily life. So in the legislative point of view, I think that we are debating on that. So how we can use artificial intelligence to help our activity, of our assistance, of our daily life, and how the human being has to be present and has to remain in his place to make a filter between what AI can do and what we need not to have from AI, and what we have to do and we have to continue to do with our minds, our intellectual activity, with our feelings, by ourselves. And what I have the possibility to read among your words is very important, because if you think about poetry, you think about dreams, you think about something that is so far from our daily activity, and I think it's a dimension that you have probably to catch to avoid all the things that we are living all the days. It's a parallel dimension, if we can. So trying to imagine that something of what we are reading is made simply from AI. I think all of us, we have a feeling of it's not something that's so good. And in your words and in your reflections, you allow us to imagine that even if a lot of words or a lot of poetries we can read are made from or with the help of artificial intelligence, they are dedicated, they are made for people. So each of us, from the same product of the AI, we can feel and we can interpret it with our mind. And so the human being is present also if it's a product of artificial intelligence. In the extreme lecture you made in your conclusion, you say, but the very important, I think, suggestion you gave us, and it's very precious. I think that's the message I want to send for you. Of course, we prepare a speech, we prepare everything, but I think that some reflection can flow like this, and after also the feeling you suggest us with your video and with your smile, allow me to say, I think that we have to imagine that poetry has to be something human, has to be something that can flow freely from our minds, and even if sometimes for so many exigencies we allow technical instruments to help us, I think that we can't lose the sight that all the things that the human beings are preparing, are offering to all of us can't be replaced by anything. And the possibility to combine all these dimensions is impossible. It's an instrument, it's something also funny sometimes to create, but can't replace in any way what we can do and what the human mind can produce. And I just read just a sentence that I prepared, because I think that's a point of reflection, that poetry reminds us of something essential. It's not just about words, but about human experience, emotions and meaning. And even if in the age of AI, this human dimension remains irreplaceable. So let me thank you for this moment of this opportunity to hear from what this kind of particular book can offer to us, because I have the possibility to read different pages, and of course I go to the conclusion just to say, okay, but this story, how is ending? Because it's very I think we are all curious to read the last pages, but let me invite you to read all the reflections that are before, because all the reflections, all the words that you put inside your masterpiece, it's small and it's in 3 languages, so you can read it in what language you prefer. I try to make this in 2 or 3 languages. Some pages I read it in the 3 languages, because also read it in different words, in different idiomas, I think offer us something to reflect that it's different from one idioma to another. And so this is also, I think, a very good thing that you made in this book. So thank you for making it. Thank you for producing it in this very place that is not, sometimes it's just vocated to help members of the European Parliament to make his daily work, also to allow the machine to go ahead. And today you offered after an hour just to stop, to switch off our mind and to think that we are so rich in our expressions. Human beings and people can be so rich in their dimensions, and to share this kind of personal or private life with all your colleagues here and with all of us. I think it could offer the possibility to say, okay, we are living abroad, we are making an important work, because we are so few to make some important things, and we have also the time to switch off our mind and to dream, and to allow us to dream all together of something that is a part of our life. Let me say hello to my colleague Lara Magoni, that is today with us. She's a member of European Parliament of our delegation, and all to all of you to share this moment. You have a full room, so I'm not the one interested in presenting, of course, this book, but also to hear from your words and from your mind what is inspiring this book. So thank you again for inviting us, and thank you all of you for being here to have this presentation.
Thank you, dear Vice President. Maybe respect the program I would introduce before sending the message. Maybe having also the opportunity of having here the Vice President, Mrs. Magoni as well. I would like to ask you, Silvia, how, let's say, how this idea to write exactly about this, let's say, started, and why did you have published this in 3 languages?
I think you see me better if I stand, right? So, first of all, thank you very much to the Vice President of the European Parliament, Antonella Sberna. Thank you, Ms. Magoni, to be here. Thank you, Lorenzo, the Director General of DG ITEC, to be here. And thank you all, because I really feel, it's a strange feeling, I was telling before, because I made so many presentations, but it's my first one with all faces I know from work, and I see colleagues from the European Commission, from the European Parliament. Of course, as I worked in different institutions, I never had the possibility to present my poetry in the place where I work in the end. And so I think this issue of matching 2 words which may look different and distant is very interesting. But in the end, we are here as human beings, and so anything we do, even in our work, and as it is so important, it should be seen as a kind of poetry, because poetry is art, is creation, and so creation belongs to the human being. So to answer to the question of Lorenzo, well, this book was inspired by a colleague of us from the Parliament, who is not here today, but many of you may know, who is Risto Nieminen, who is my head of unit. And we were talking about poetry, my poetry. I think I was publishing my first book, and he was very interested by that, and he's a user of AI. So he showed me on his phone how to produce a poem with an application. He told me, do you know, it was a few years ago, so it was not as today, that is very usual, but he told me, you know, give me a word, give me a topic, and I will give you a poem. And I was surprised. And he did it on his phone, and then he read this poem to me. And I was surprised, but then I spontaneously told him, yes, I said, that's very interesting, but if I do that, so if I produce a poem through artificial intelligence, then I lose the best part of it, which is making poetry. When I write poetry, is an act for me. In fact, it's an act of creation, and so through this act, I live. I live because I am a human being who is unique also in myself, in the very specific moment where I am inspired, where I feel something, because we are also different moment by moment. So it's such a huge and nice act that I could never renounce to that, because I really feel well when I do that. And then I was surprised by my own words, because I realized that it was true. At least for me, it was really true. So I said, and this provoked me. And then after 2 years, I think, I felt yes, I was always writing poetry, my books are all poetry books, but I felt the need to communicate this reflection. And I decided to add, now I enlarge my answer, but to add to this reflection a concrete test, a concrete experiment. I said, why if I reproduce what Risto showed me with one poem? I will compare my poems, human poems, with poems created by AI. And from there, I made a research. I know almost all the AI applications, because there are AI applications specifically to produce poetry. It's incredible. And yes, and then my book was born, yes, on that. And the second question was in 3 languages. Yeah. Well, all my poetry is in 3 languages, even in 4, because I wrote 2 books for children, but also for adults, so My Cat and My Dog. And I decided to translate them in Netherlands, in Dutch, not myself, but the other books are all in 3 languages, because I feel after 22 years that I live here in Brussels and I work for the European Union, I feel European, and I have friends with whom I speak French and others with whom I speak English. And these are the 2 languages I really speak more than others. So I thought, yes, I will translate my own poems, and that's what I did with this essay. Of course, translating poems is a different, and it's another creative act, you can believe it, because translating a poetry is, yes, can change, and there it's really an exercise of reproducing the emotions in another language. So that's another chapter, but to talk about, we can organize another presentation just on poetry, which is interesting. But in this book, so this book came spontaneously in 3 languages, because I thought, and it's a very short one, because if you take, this book is in fact 3 books in one, because, yeah. And I also think it's a good tool to export, I mean, to make the whole world know that, here in Europe we have this value, which is the multilingualism. And it's something, I mean, when you go outside Europe, you realize, for some populations, or some friends I have outside Europe, you know 2 languages, no, not 3 languages, 3 languages? So for them it's so special. And I think this is part of our culture, or of our, and as the Vice President said before, yes, if you read, especially poetry, in 3 languages, you realize, at least my poetry, because I am the translator of myself, so I can do that. I can allow to myself to write a poem which is the same, but I can change a bit some words, some expressions, because I know that expression is more fitted to a specific language. In English, maybe you wouldn't express yourself in an emotion in the same way you express it in Italian or in French. And you discover a word in this case, because you really see how the effect is different. But in order to arrive to the same emotional effect, then you need to use the right tools, which are words in this case.
Thank you very much. Now we will, let's say, see the. But before, you already told us a lot, because also in translation, there is a continuity in this creative activity of poetry, and who more than the author is capable to do that. So thank you for explaining this to us. Just to remind to all of us, what does it mean AI, and also in this context, I take the definition. There are many definitions which is in your book. AI systems have the capacity to process data and information in a way that resembles, so quite similar, not identical, I would say, intelligent behavior, and typically includes aspects of reasoning, learning, perception, prediction, planning, or control. But of course, in terms of feeling, I don't believe honestly that we can have the same result. And maybe we will discover in a while where is the difference between a genuine act of poetry and something produced, even increasingly better through this technology. Now I think we can show the message from Mr. Benifei.
Thank you very much for inviting me in this presentation of the book Poetry in the Age of AI by Silvia Polidori. I am very happy that I can contribute briefly to this reflection, to this discussion, even though only with a video message, because on the day of the presentation, I will be, while you are seeing this video, I will be in a parliamentary mission abroad. But I think it's very important that in the European Parliament we have a discussion about how AI and creativity interact with each other. I myself worked on AI regulation as rapporteur of the AI Act, and so I've seen how important is to investigate how creativity is impacted by artificial intelligence. For example, when we look at how we can support human creativity in the remuneration of artists, when this is at risk due to the development of generative AI that is trained with the same artistic production coming from humans. But also, as the book explores, there is the issue of whether AI is able to replicate fully the experience of poetry as a way for emancipation and for elevation of humankind. We are experiencing a tremendous development of AI capabilities, and that's why we approved also legislation to prevent risks, to deal with existing issues that are threatening fundamental rights, health of people, security. But also we are faced with more fundamental questions about what is human, what is human creation, what is a human mind and human emotions. All issues that are linked to creative production, to human creation, and to poetry. Poetry also is something that in itself contains a mystery, a specific link to the most internal, I would say, feelings of human beings, the inner self of everyone that can be activated in ways that sometimes we don't even fully understand through poetry. Poetry can create this magic we can say, of bringing ourselves outside of our present self and creating a resonance with something that is outside of us. So can all of these be replicated by an AI product, an AI produced poetry? Or can AI feel and interpret and understand what a poetry piece is? Well, my personal view, based on my work on the topic, is that the AI of today cannot really do this. It's far away from this, with its imitation approach. But I don't know where we are going with the development of AI, so I'm not sure I can say the same in the future. But for the AI that we see developed today, I think that human creativity, human poetry, the experience of creation and of fruition of poetry is something that is still distant, although there can be a very good production of poetical content from AI systems. But being a poet and creating poetry, I mean, I don't need to go through the various theories around poetic creation. It's something that seems to be different from the generation of poetic content that can imitate poetry by a generative AI system. So the issue is still on the table. It's complex and it's well worth debate and investigation by someone who, as a poet, as Miss Polidori is bringing as an experience, can shine some lights on such a important topic. So in the end, if I can say, if AI can substitute human experience in its most extraordinary forms, like poetry creation, poetical inspiration, and its fruition also, as I said. Well, we will continue this debate, I'm sure, and I hope that this presentation of the book and the exchange that will follow will advance some of these reflections. So thank you very much for having invited me to this discussion, and I hope you will have an excellent debate, and I'm sure we will continue this exchange also in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I invite the colleagues. There are still places here to sit. Come here, Christian, the autrice. You can approach here. And so now, this book is not only a comparison between the product of AI and real poetry, and then you will tell us what is your conclusion on this comparison. But it contains at the beginning a very, let's say, rich and solid, let's say, exposition of the background, going through, let's say, philosophy, and also trying to, let's say, explain what poetry is and how is the feeling of making poetry. And I think that you probably would like to start with this concept.
Yes. In fact, in this book, I tried to analyze in this way to identify first what poetry is, then artificial intelligence we have talked about, and then poetry as a product, something which is produced, and poetry as a process, so a process of writing, in fact, something, a production. And yes, as a poetry, so poetry comes, poesia in Italian, also comes from Latin, Greek, poiesis.
So also the etymology is showing that this is something made.
Exactly.
Process making.
It means to create, exactly, to create. And to create, yes, a verbal composition with some within some schemes, which is the metrics or other scheme. But and this is the point which distinguishes poetry from prose, where there are no restrictions. In poetry, you have this restriction. I always make the example of cooking. I love cooking. Cooking plate normally, and patisserie. In pastry, cooking pastry, you have specific rules, and so that's a bit like poetry and prose. So in poetry, you have specific metrics to respect. But it's a process of creation. So when we speak about creation, we need, if it is a creation, then there is a creator, someone who creates. And who creates poetry? So historically, since the beginning, poetry has been a human creation characterized by the two aspects, the rational aspects, but also the emotional aspects, the feeling, the inspiration. And so I start the book focusing on this, so focusing in fact on the human being functional then to explain what poetry is. And the human being, from the ancient philosophers, has been seen at the beginning as an ensemble. Today I speak several languages together because the book is in 3 languages, so together with the nature. So the human being a part of the nature, was also looking for the truth, for his truth in the nature. And poetry was seen as a tool to reach this truth. So it was an art, because any form of art, has a tension to the truth, or at least at that time. So the very first poetry was a tool to reach the truth, like the knowledge. And then, so I make an excursus from the pre-Socratics, I love philosophy, so from the pre-Socratics to Plato, to Aristotle, and then the Christian philosophers. And for example, it's nice to say that there is a difference between Plato, the vision of Plato, and Aristotle, because Plato was more focused on the rational part of the soul. And so for Plato, poetry was distracting the man from the research to the truth. So it was not functional, because poetry is something not rational. There is something inside for which you cannot, it cannot help you to reach the truth. Though it's part of nature, it's part of the human being, but no, it's better to stay on the history, on facts. While Aristotle, who had the vision of man, who was body and soul together, the hylomorphic vision, body and soul all together. You cannot distinguish the body cannot exist without the soul. And so how to research the truth better than with poetry? Because poetry contains the rational part, but also the feelings. And so for Aristotle, poetry was even better placed as a tool to research the truth than history, because history is facts, while poetry is imagination, is something that we have inside, it's part of us. In the world where we live today, I need to say we are the more and more, and I think this fits this presentation here, because we tend to be very rational. Everything should be under our control. Everything should be schematic, and we need to have the control of everything, the rational control. But nature is much, much, much more than that. And so if we use all part of us in the Aristotelic way, we are much more. So I agree with Aristotle in the sense that we are much more, and if we use ourselves completely, we can see more the reality of the world. So what the ancient philosophers were looking for, the truth. In fact, with then the positivism in the 18th century, we have the human being started to search the truth outside. So the positivism is something, so we forget about the human being who is part of the nature. Everything is outside, and so he starts his research of the truth from outside. So even poetry started to be, as all arts. We see also the art in the Parliament is very, I would say, more positivistic than because it's expression of the human. I mean, the human being can express himself in different ways, but it's not the way to search the truth. So it's just an expression without having this additional meaning of researching the truth, researching the identity, let's say.
Despite the finality,
yeah.
Everywhere we see that it is a creative act. No? We can agree on this.
Yeah.
And maybe it's also the moment you can choose something that you want to read for us.
Yes, for sure.
Because then we have to see who is the winner. Because in the book there is also, you ask the AI to distinguish between the real poetry and the one produced by AI, and it's interesting, by the way.
Yeah, in fact, so I spoke about the war. It was just one chapter of the book, but when I speak about philosophy, I exaggerate. But then I go to the core point of the book, which is comparing this research I spoke about before, so comparing the human being poetry with the AI poetry. And I compared my human being poetry with the AI. And I asked the different applications to reproduce some poems, starting from my poems, meaning from the topic of the poems I wrote. And so I will read you some parts. The first experiment was with a poem that I wrote on happiness. I will read some verses of my poem and then I will tell you. So, happiness. Life continues on a stork's nest. Heartbeats of life that open up to the world. We are instruments to continue existence and to serve joy. We adapt to instincts, we follow them, confident and positive. We are free in the infinite world of life's creation, and we follow it. It's good to adapt to a perfect masterpiece and be part of it. There is nothing greater we can do. Happiness is living life as it should be. This is my poem. So I gave to the different applications the topic of happiness and the word stork, because storks are, I mean, in my poem, but not always being in the subject of happiness, of course. And various applications, for example, the first one gave me this poem. Happiness. Bliss is not restless. Bliss is exceptionally restless. Never forget the quiet and restless bliss. A calm, no matter how hard you try, it will always be yellow. The calm will make you shiver? Really? Singing is harmony. Harmony is song. Never forget the song confused and confused, and so on. So exactly. In this first application, we can see that there are a lot of mistakes of sense, of grammatic mistakes. So it's really a disaster. Then other applications, I don't mention them; they are all in the book. I precisely mentioned them, but there are applications who make it better. And then I made the second example. To be short, the second example was on one of my poems on love, and it's Morning Kiss. I will read just a few verses and then. Morning kiss, diving gift to man who tastes it in love. Touch of energy from a good night's sleep, sweet start of a new day, and so on. And the machine, the application, gave some results, which were, I won't read, but I will describe it. They were much better than the first example, but why? Because, of course, love, kiss, these are topics which are very usual, so the machine copies, in fact. So it copied better, though it repeated many of my words, because of course there was a lot of mourning, a lot of kisses, a lot of love, so it repeated. This is exactly the proof that the machine takes, and I'm not the only poet who describes love with a kiss or with the mourning, but of course in a different way. And then the last experiment was on with a poem on my dog, who is called Sun, and Hem Bone. I will read only a few passages of mine. What a pleasure, what a taste, my bone you take, my heart's haste. When Silvia gives the prize, it's because I'm good and wise. I salivate at the sight, in the dark I see the light, and so on. So my poem was a classic poem for children, mostly for children, with rhymes. And the machine, if you read the book you will read, had a wonderful result. So in this case it was even better than the morning kiss, because a dog and a bone are really topics which are very usual. And so the result was very good. And then, actually, I was curious about the fact if the machine, because I also investigated on which are the criteria of how can you recognize a human poem and an AI poem. And I asked the machine. So I challenged the application and I said, could you tell me if and why this poem, I gave my poem, the first one on the storks on happiness, if this poem is a human poem or an AI poem. And actually the machine answered the application and gave me the criteria. This was a Gemini AI, responded with arguments in favor of AI-generated poetry. I read a few, like almost too perfect thematic coherence. So my poem was, or a positive but somewhat general sentiment. And arguments in favor of poetry written by humans, evocative opening image, the storks, which were very emotional undercurrent, and so on. So the conclusion was that the application thought that it could have, it had some doubts, but with the highest probability was that it was a human-made poem. So I was happy for that, because at least, yeah. But actually the point is that, as also Vice President said before, all in the end, it's always us. Even in front of a poem which is produced by artificial intelligence, who says if it's a good poem or not? It's the one who listens to it if it's right, or if it's the human being who reads it if he reads it. So in the end, it's always us, and it's always our emotions at the base. So we can be, maybe a poem produced by AI can produce more emotions in some of us, more than a poem written by me, by a human. But it's the human being with these emotions which judges. And anyway, what I underline in this essay is that we tend again today to focus on the products, on the results. So we are here, it's a presentation. But it's not only a presentation, actually it's not a presentation, it's an act. We came here, we are together, and for each of my presentations is a different, today also I prepared in a different way, but now with you in front of me and with the emotions, even the things we don't realize really, we don't rationalize, but we feel each other, and this is something unique, human, only human. So it's a question really of identity, of substance, and that's why for me poetry, as many other things, like the presentation of today, is not only the presentation but is the fact to be here and to listen, to speak, to feel. So poetry is not only the poem. So yeah, okay, we can have also poems produced by AI, it's okay. But in the end, why? And that's the question I finished my book. It's the first question I started actually. Why we should lose as human beings? Because in the end we are not machine, we are speaking among humans. So our point of view is the point of view of a human, like a dog has its point of view of a dog, but we are humans. So in our interest, we shouldn't care so much about the product, about the real poem, but the fact to do it, to write it. Maybe among you there are people who like to write, or others who like to draw. There are people who are passionate, they draw in a wonderful way, or to make music. It's not important the final melody, but it's when you produce, when you create. In my book trailers there are several, there are several music which are produced by someone, created. It's the fact of creation, so the act, the action, more than the result. Yeah.
Thank you, Silvia. You also transmitted to us a lot of energy with your intervention. I'm asking if among us there is someone who would like to. We have still, I know, a few minutes.
Sorry, yes, because we have another movie at 6:30.
Yeah. So, yes, please. Few minutes for remarks and intervention.
Not for question.
Question.
Ciao Silvia, it's a pleasure to meet again.
Grazie.
So, for instance, like if you made any kind of analysis of how this AI tool, they are elaborating this text. And I think into one of the Italian poem that anyone knows, Sistema l'autunno le foglie sugli alberi le foglie. So that is a metaphor, no? And so do you know if they are applying this kind of methodology, this tool? Among us there are some engineers, so for sure it's a question more related to kind of curiosity on technical side.
Yeah, of course, thank you for the question. Of course, the machine is copying everything, and not only everything, but also, so there is an infinite quantity of information, of course, but there is what is infinite and what is not, a human being could never do that. It's an infinite way of assembling all the metaphors, for example, which are already produced and which are on the web and so on. So of course the machine can do that, can do, and the more and more can do it better and better. Yeah.
2 short points. I've been at several presentations of yours, and I think I was able to read between the lines. And do you think that can be provided by artificial intelligence as well, or not? And the second, artificial intelligence is taking what has been produced wherever. But if I look, for example, on you now, and if I would like to compare you, I would be able to compare you with a pair of shoes, with a skyscraper, hyacinth, or not usual comparisons of yours. Would be artificial intelligence able to do this as well? Because never someone compared a poetry producer with a pair of shoes or a skyscraper. That I could do, but possibly not artificial intelligence.
Well, I'm not a technician on this side, but I'm sure that the more and more, as I made the example of applications which are not yet ready for poems, but the more and more everything will be possible. But the fact is that it will be always the result of putting data together, and putting them together in many different ways, in many different combinations. So we will arrive to compare a human being with a pair of shoes because as you said it now, maybe you will write it and it will be in the web, and then the machine will steal this
Always
information.
afterwards, but they will not create the comparison between you and a pair of shoes.
Well, who knows what the... Yeah, I mean, we can never say something is impossible because we're gonna, but yeah.
No, but I wish the wording to read between the lines or to feel between the lines.
Yeah.
That is was possible for me when I heard your poems on other occasions.
At least now the artificial intelligence is not feeling anything. I mean, there is no feeling, it's only...
Can you add something that I feel between the lines as I feel one of your poems?
If I will understand, if the machine can feel something or...
If the machine can produce something, that I have a similar feeling of the lines in between, the meaning.
Yeah, if I give the input, the right input, yeah, I think so. I mean, that's what I did, in fact. Yeah.
It's a sort of matter of prompts you provide to the machine. I think we'll see. In any case, I think I'm afraid that we need to. I don't know if you want to just to say something to conclude.
Yes, maybe first of all, thank you very much, Lorenzo. Really glad to have shared with you and with all of you my book. And for the ones who want to continue to follow me, apart from subscribing to the newsletter from my website, where you will receive news on new books and on presentations, the next rendezvous is Sunday, 29th of March at 5 o'clock at the Book Fair of Brussels, where I would be very glad to invite all of you. I'm very glad also there that I organized myself the last panel of the stand of the European Commission. So you can join in Place à l'Europe, they called it Place à l'Europe this year, at 5 o'clock, and there will be a surprise because it's a mix between a presentation like today and really the artistic part, so poetry reading with the music.
Thank you very much.